Why aren't those unlucky creatures at home catching rats instead of crawling up here?
Simone Foster's jaw tightened. She didn't move.
Sir, I'm a guest. Margaret Ellis has...
Don't mention her Camellia name.
Gregory Whitmore's lips curled in disgust.
You all stink like you crawled out of a garbage can.
Simone took a step forward, slowly.
Sir, you crossed the line.
His face flushed, his eyes turned calculating. He lifted the espresso cup from the waiter's tray. Then his wrist tilted down, slow and deliberate. Hot coffee spilled onto her hoodie. The documents soaked through.
You smell a failure. Those filthy rags always have that smell.
And even coffee can't help hide it.
Simone didn't flinch. 3 soft words.
I'll remember this.
He had no idea he'd just ended his own career, with his own hands. 5:15 on a Friday morning. The East River wore a sheet of fog. Simone Foster ran north along the path beside the FDR, breath steady, AirPods in. The audio in her ears wasn't music. It was a governance audiobook. The 3rd chapter, the one about boardroom succession. She'd already listened to it twice this week. By 6:15, she was back in the Tribeca corporate apartment, hair pulled into a wet ponytail. Black coffee, 2 slices of toast, the Wall Street Journal open on her tablet. On the kitchen counter, in a small silver frame, sat a photograph of her mother, a retired public school teacher from the east side of Detroit, smiling at a backyard barbecue. Her mother had taught 4th grade for 31 years. She had also taught Simone 2 things she still lived by: keep your dignity and keep the receipts. Simone touched the corner of the frame the way some people touch a saint's medal. Then she got dressed for work. She was 38 years old. She had grown up in a duplex off Mack Avenue, the daughter of a teacher and a city bus driver who had both worked second jobs so she could attend a magnet high school across town. A full scholarship to the University of Michigan, a Harvard MBA at 24, 12 years at one of the world's largest strategy consultancies, the last 4 as a partner. 3 years after that, as an operating partner at a respected private equity firm. By the time her name had landed on the shortlist for the Whitmore Capital Group CEO search, the headhunters had used a phrase she had heard in some form her entire career: a quiet superstar. She didn't love the phrase. Quiet wasn't a quality she'd chosen. Quiet was a survival tool. The Whitmore Capital Group board had voted in writing 6 weeks earlier. The decision was final. Gregory Whitmore, the founder, the magazine covers, the $70 million art collection, was being eased out. There had been 6 HR complaints in 18 months, 2 of them filed by women of color who had since left the firm. Performance was slipping. The independent directors, led by a former federal judge named Margaret Ellis, had moved quietly, the way boards do when a founder is involved. The formal public announcement was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 sharp. Simone had not yet been introduced to the company. No one outside the boardroom knew her name. Friday afternoon, she ran a charity half-marathon in Brooklyn, sponsored by her old consulting firm. By 5:30, she was back in Manhattan, still in her gray hoodie, black joggers, sneakers, and a low ponytail, her face bare of any makeup. A small backpack hung from one shoulder. She didn't go home to change. She didn't need to. The plan was 10 minutes. Pick up a sealed binder Margaret Ellis had left for her at the executive floor reception, then home to read it over the weekend. The Whitmore Capitol Tower stood 60 stories above the financial district, all glass and pale stone. The lobby at dusk caught the last gold of the sun through the western windows. Exhausted junior analysts trickled out in twos, ties loosened, bags slumped. Behind the security desk, a wall of framed magazine covers ran the length of the marble. Every cover featured Gregory Whitmore. Every cover. Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg Markets, Barron's. Not one of his executives, not one of his analysts. Just him, 15 times over, smiling the same practiced smile. A founder's altar. The young man on the security desk looked up as she approached, His nameplate read A. Williams. He was 26, polite, his uniform pressed, a small body camera clipped to the chest of his vest with a steady green light. She handed him her temporary visitor pass. "Miss Foster, welcome." He smiled, then glanced at his clipboard. "Miss Ellis flagged you down for a 50-floor pickup. Just so you're aware, ma'am, every interaction on the executive levels is recorded on body cam and ceiling cam. Standard building policy since 2022. If you need a copy of any recording for your records, you can request it through HR." "Thank you." She meant it. He was the first person in the building who had looked at her like a person. "East elevator, ma'am. Have a good evening." She walked toward the elevator bank, sneakers silent on the polished floor. Above her, 50 floors up, Gregory Whitmore was already pouring his second espresso of the night. The 50th floor opened with a soft chime. Simone stepped out into a different world. The trading floors below ran on noise, phones, chatter, the hum of 3,000 monitors. The founder's wing was silent. Thick carpet swallowed her footsteps. The walls were paneled in dark walnut, hung with oil paintings of Hudson Valley landscapes. The air smelled faintly of old leather and lemon polish. A discreet brass arrow pointed left, executive reception. She followed it. She'd taken maybe 20 steps when she heard them coming the other way. A wine cart on rubber wheels, the muted clink of glassware, men's voices low and amused. A donor dinner had been set in the executive dining room at the far end of the wing, and the founder was walking the corridor with his court. Gregory Whitmore came first, 61 years old, silver at the temples, navy suit, no tie. Behind him, Bradley Sinclair, the chief operating officer, 52, broad and pink-cheeked, a glass of something brown already in his hand. Two junior partners, both white men in their 30s, trailing like ducklings, and the sommelier, a slim man in a black vest named Daniel Carter pushing the wine cart, bringing up the rear. Simone stepped to the wall to let them pass. She didn't speak. She was a guest. She was here for 10 minutes. Gregory stopped. His eyes traveled her once. Sneakers, joggers, hoodie, ponytail, no jewelry, no badge visible. Then again, slower. He drew in a long breath through his nose, like he was tasting bad wine. "You're on the wrong floor." His voice carried. It was made to carry. "The service elevator is on the east side. Take it back down." Bradley made a sound, half cough, half laugh. "Or should we call building services to escort you, sweetheart? They handle misplacements." Simone kept her hands loose at her sides. Her badge was clipped to the waistband of her joggers, tucked under the hem of the hoodie. She could have pulled it out. She didn't. "Sir," she said, polite even, "I'm a guest. Margaret Ellis has a binder waiting for me at the executive reception. I'll be 10 minutes. The hand wave came fast, like a man brushing crumbs off a tablecloth. "Don't say her name." The two junior partners exchanged a glance. One of them looked at the carpet. "Margaret doesn't leave packages for people who walk into this building dressed like that," Gregory said. "Look around. Look at the floor you're standing on. Look at what you're standing on it in." He took another step closer. Simone didn't move back. "You people walk in here reeking like you crawled out of a garbage can. Whoever buzzed you up tonight is fired by morning. I want a name." A door clicked open somewhere down the hall. A young black woman in a navy dress, Camille Johnson, an executive assistant who'd worked the founder's wing for 2 years, stepped out, took one look at the tableau, and went very still. Her eyes met Simone's for half a second. Then she dropped her gaze to the carpet and walked the other way. A second figure appeared briefly at the far end of the corridor, a senior executive in shirt sleeves returning from the dining room. He saw what was happening. He slowed for one beat. Then he turned around and walked back the way he came. The door clicked shut behind him. Simone took a step forward. Slow, steady. "Sir," she said, "lower your voice." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Gregory's face changed. It didn't flush. It went pale at the edges. The cold of a man not used to being told what to do by anyone, much less by her. His eyes turned calculating. He turned, slow, and held out his hand to Daniel. Espresso. Daniel hesitated for one heartbeat, then handed over the small white cup on its saucer. Gregory walked the 3 paces to where Simone stood. He didn't break eye contact. He lifted the cup as if to take a sip. Then his wrist tilted, slow, almost lazy. The hot espresso poured down the front of her gray hoodie. Brown ran in dark rivers down the cotton, soaked through her t-shirt, ran over the sealed manila folder she was holding against her ribs. A few droplets hit her sneakers. Steam rose between them. The smell of dark roast filled the corridor, mingling with the old leather and the lemon polish. Daniel moved first. "Oh, sir, there's a towel on the cart." "Don't bother with the towel," Gregory said. He set the empty cup back on the saucer with a small, polite click. "Save it for something worth cleaning." Bradley laughed, loud. He turned to the junior partners and lifted his glass. "Gentlemen, this is why we keep the diversity hires on the trading floor. They don't know how to dress for the upstairs." The 2 junior partners managed half laughs and looked at the wall. Simone didn't move. She didn't wipe at her chest. She didn't step back. She didn't raise the folder to look at the damage. She kept her eyes on Gregory's. Her breath went in, out, in. "She smells of failure," Gregory said. His voice rose, cruel and clear, and now it carried all the way down the corridor. "Those filthy rags always have that smell, and even coffee can't help mask it." A small sound from somewhere down the hall. Maybe a gasp, maybe a door closing. 3 soft words from Simone. "I'll remember this." Gregory smiled. It was the smile of a man who had won so many of these moments he didn't bother counting anymore. "Remember what?" he said. "That you don't belong here? Good. Lesson learned." He turned to Bradley. "Call building services. I want a name on whoever cleared this, whatever this is, to come up here. And pull the lobby footage. I want it on my desk by Monday morning so I can have her banned from every WCG property by lunchtime." "On it," Bradley said, already reaching for his phone. Gregory turned back to Simone one last time. "We have standards. You walk through that lobby looking like this, you embarrass every man and woman who built this firm. Now turn around and find your way back to the elevator." Simone didn't turn around. She walked past him. She walked past Bradley. She walked past the 2 junior partners and the frozen sommelier with his cart. She walked the remaining length of the corridor, coffee still dripping down her hoodie, and she went to the executive reception desk. The receptionist behind the desk was a woman named Donna Anderson, late 50s, glasses on a beaded chain. She had worked this desk for 19 years. She had seen the whole thing from where she sat. Her hand was already on the sealed manila binder Margaret had left that morning. Margaret had told her clearly, "Give this to Ms. Foster when she comes in, no one else." Donna's other hand was shaking. Behind Simone, Gregory's voice cut across the corridor. "Donna, do not give that woman anything. She is not on any access list I approved. If she puts her hand on company property, that is theft." Donna looked at Simone. Simone looked back. There was no anger in her face, just a small, quiet nod. Donna had a son in college and a husband on dialysis. Gregory could fire her on a phone call. "It's all right," Simone said gently. "Don't lose your job over it. I'll come back Monday." Donna's eyes filled. She didn't speak. Her hand stayed on the binder. Her lips moved just once. "I'm sorry." Simone gave the smallest nod back. "I know." Gregory laughed behind her. "You won't be coming back, sweetheart. Not to this floor, not to this building, not on Monday, not ever." Simone tilted her head. Just slightly, the smallest motion. Anyone watching her closely would have seen it. The calm shift of a woman filing every word away for later. No one was watching her closely. Not yet. She turned, walked the length of the corridor back to the east elevator, and pressed the button. Behind her, the wine cart began rolling again. A glass clinked. Gregory said something low to the junior partners, and they laughed. Business resumed. The elevator doors opened on the first try. She stepped inside. As the doors began to close, she looked up, once, at the small black dome of the ceiling camera in the corner of the cab. The green light beside it was already on. The descent took 42 seconds. Simone watched the floor numbers tick down in red. She did not wipe at her hoodie. She did not check her folder. She did not pull her phone out yet. She breathed. 42 seconds. 20 floors. The trick her mother had taught her years ago. Name your fears in small numbers, and they got smaller too. When the doors slid open into the lobby, 2 security guards were waiting. They were not Andre. They were 2 men in their 40s, broader than him, faces blank. The lead one held up a hand. "Ma'am, we've been asked to hold you here for a moment. There's a question about your access." Behind them, Andre Williams was crossing the lobby at a half-run, the green light on his body cam still steady, a radio handset in his free hand. He stopped beside the 2 larger guards. He did not touch them. He did not raise his voice. "What's the situation?" The lead guard looked at his earpiece. "Mr. Sinclair's office. They want her bag searched," said the founder's order. Andre's jaw set, just slightly. He looked at Simone, then back at the lead guard. "We don't initiate a search of a guest's personal property without a duty supervisor sign-off on a written authorization slip and the guest's verbal consent on record. That's Section 4 of the Building Security Manual, page 9, updated 2022. They said it's the founder's. It can be the founder's order, the mayor's order, or my own grandmother's order. We follow the manual. Call the duty supervisor and get him down here. Until he signs, nobody touches her bag." The lead guard's mouth tightened. He looked at his partner. The partner shrugged. The lead guard radioed in. While they waited, Andre turned to Simone. His voice dropped. Calm, professional, kind. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to come over to the security office while we sort this out. It's not custody, it's just procedure. Everything is on camera, audio and video, the whole way, just so you know." "Thank you, Mr. Williams." He almost smiled at the mister. Then he didn't. He nodded once and gestured toward the door behind the desk. The security office was small. 4 chairs, 1 long window that looked out into the lobby, 3 monitors on the wall, each split into 9 camera feeds. Andre offered her a chair. She sat. She set the soaked folder on her lap. Brown coffee stain dried now to a dark crust along the edge. Her eyes drifted to the monitors. Camera 14 showed the 50th floor corridor in real time. Gregory was already back in the executive dining room raising a wine glass. Camera 9 showed the elevator she had ridden down. Camera 6 showed Donna Anderson at the reception desk, hands folded in her lap, head bowed. Simone memorized the angles. Then she looked away. A few minutes later, Bradley Sinclair's voice came through the office speaker on a one-way intercom from the 50th floor. He didn't know it was being recorded by every camera in the building, plus Andre's body cam, plus the security station's own audio feed. Or maybe he did know, and didn't care. "What's the holdup down there? Search the bag and walk her out." The duty supervisor, a heavy-set man named Frank Mendez, had arrived by then. He listened to Andre, listened to the lead guard, listened to the speaker, and then he did something that Bradley clearly was not expecting. He said, "No." "Sir, we cannot initiate a search without a written incident report and verbal consent. We have neither. I'm not signing this. If you want to file a complaint with HR, you can do that Monday." There was a long silence on the speaker, then a click as Bradley hung up. The lead guard exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for a year. Frank looked at Simone. He looked like he wanted to apologize and didn't know how. So he didn't. He just nodded at her once, the way one professional nods at another, and stepped back to his post by the door. The radio crackled at his hip. Nobody spoke. Outside the glass, the lobby chandelier hummed faintly in the silence. Upstairs, Gregory was not done. Through the small window of the security office, Simone could see the lobby. She watched the express elevator open. Bradley Sinclair stepped out with a face like a clenched fist. He walked toward her at speed. He didn't come into the security office. He stood outside the glass and pointed at her through it. "You, stand up. We're walking you out of this building. This is exactly why we vet every person who steps onto our floors. You let one of you in dressed like a vagrant, the whole brand collapses. Now stand up." Simone didn't stand. She didn't even turn her head all the way. She lifted her phone instead. "I'm making a call. You can wait." Bradley laughed, but it was the wrong laugh. Too high, too fast. "Who you callin', sweetheart? Your boyfriend? Your supervisor? You don't have a supervisor. You don't have a boyfriend that matters." Simone scrolled through her contacts. Her thumb stopped on a name. She tapped it. She put the phone to her ear. It rang twice. "Margaret," Simone said. "I'm in the lobby of the building. I'd like you to come by when you have a moment. There's something I think you should see for yourself." A pause. Margaret said something on the other end. Simone listened. Then she said, "Yes, I have time, thank you." She lowered the phone. She slid it back into her pocket. She looked at Bradley through the glass. She did not smile, she did not glare, she simply looked at him the way a teacher looks at a child about to find out what consequences are. Bradley faltered for half a second. Then he recovered. "Get her out of my building. We're holding her here until the situation is reviewed," Andre said pleasantly. He did not move from his position by the door. "Procedure, sir." Bradley stared at him. Andre stared back, polite as a wedding photographer. Bradley turned and walked back toward the elevators. 11 minutes later, Margaret Ellis walked through the lobby's front doors. She was 64 years old. She wore a long black evening coat, pearls, and the unhurried walk of a woman who had once sentenced grown men to 20 years in federal prison and never lost a night of sleep over it. She had been on her way to a charity gala at the Met. She was not on her way to the Met anymore. She crossed the lobby slowly. Her heels clicked once, twice, 3 times on the marble. The receptionist at the front desk stood up. So did the lead guard. So did Frank Mendez. Andre stayed where he was, but he straightened his shoulders. Margaret stopped at the security office door. She looked at Simone. She looked at the coffee-stained hoodie. She looked at the dried brown crust on the manila folder. Her face did not change. Her eyes, however, did. They went very flat. She did not say, "Miss Foster." She did not say, "Miss Foster, are you all right?" She said one thing to the security team. "I want every piece of footage from this lobby, the executive corridor on the 50th floor, every elevator cab, and every floor between, from the past 2 hours, placed under audit hold protocol effective immediately. I want a written confirmation in my email by midnight tonight. Sergeant Mendez, you signed off on body cam policy in 2022 after the Henderson incident. I pushed for that policy. People have been forgetting why. They are about to remember." "Yes, Judge," Frank said. His old title for her. It had been 12 years since she'd been on the bench. He used it anyway. Margaret turned to Simone, her face softened by exactly 1 degree. "Save your energy for Monday," she said quietly. "I'll take it from here." She rested one hand on Simone's shoulder for half a second. It was the only soft thing in the lobby that night. She walked into the security office. She picked up the soaked folder from Simone's lap. She tucked it under her arm. She looked at Andre and said, "Walk her to a car. Personally, not a guard, you. And Mr. Williams, thank you." "Yes, ma'am." Andre walked Simone across the lobby. The lead guard stepped aside. The receptionist did not look up from her keyboard. Outside, the air was cold and smelled of rain. The sidewalk shone wet under the streetlights. A few people hurried past with umbrellas. The town car's tailpipes smoked in the cold. Across the avenue, the city kept moving like nothing had happened. Maybe nothing had. Yet. Before Simone got in, she turned to Andre. "What's the Henderson incident?" Andre looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Ask Judge Ellis on Monday, ma'am." He held the door open. She slid inside. She did not look back at the building. She did not need to. 50 floors above her, Gregory Whitmore was telling a story to 3 Saudi donors about a misunderstanding with a cleaning woman who had wandered onto the executive floor. He was laughing. The donors were laughing. The wine was excellent. He had no idea what had just happened in his own lobby. The weekend moved the way weekends move for people on opposite sides of the same coming storm. Saturday morning, Simone sat at the kitchen counter in Tribeca with the dry, coffee-crusted manila folder open in front of her and read every page twice. Margaret had stopped by at noon with outside counsel. By evening, they had a confirmation timeline, a press release, and a sealed paper bag on the corner of her desk holding the gray hoodie. Sunday, she ran 10 miles, called her mother in Detroit, and said nothing about Friday. In Greenwich, Gregory Whitmore played 18 holes, hosted dinner for 9, and told the cleaning woman's story twice. Both times, it got laughs. Monday, 8:45 a.m. The 60th floor boardroom of Whitmore Capital Group, 1 floor above the corridor where the espresso had spilled. The boardroom was long and pale, a slab of black walnut, 12 leather chairs, a wall of glass facing the East River. The light was clean. Margaret Ellis sat at the right hand of the chair, singular, the one at the head, the one Gregory had occupied for 31 years. Around the table, the other independent directors. 2 general counsels against the wall. Bradley Sinclair, present as COO, and in the second seat to Margaret's right, back angled toward the door, a woman in a charcoal suit, hair in a low chignon, small gold studs. Beside her laptop sat a flat brown paper bag, neatly folded at the top, a small adhesive evidence label across the seam. Gregory walked in at 8:59. He had slept fine. He carried his espresso. He greeted 3 directors by first name. He glanced at the woman in charcoal, back of her head, professional posture, and assumed she was outside counsel. He sat down at the foot of the table. Margaret rapped her pen once on the wood. "Good morning. We'll go straight to item 1 on this morning's consent agenda. Confirmation of the Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Capital Group, effective today, pursuant to the unanimous written consent executed by this board 6 weeks ago and previously circulated. Madam CEO?" The woman in the charcoal suit turned around. The cup stopped halfway to Gregory's mouth. It did not fall. He did not drop it. He simply forgot it was in his hand. The espresso cooled by half a degree. He stared. It was her. Same eyes, same composure, same dark, level gaze that on Friday night had said, "I'll remember this." The board, on cue, said the words, "Confirmed." Margaret looked down the table at Gregory, and her voice was very level. "Gregory, please vacate the head of the table for the incoming chief executive." He did not move. His face went through 3 colors in 2 seconds, flushed, then pale, then a waxy gray that no boardroom had ever flattered. "Margaret," he managed, "I don't know what. There's clearly some. This is a serious. Gregory. The chair." He stood up. The legs of the chair scraped the floor. $60,000 of Italian leather. The sound was loud. Simone Foster rose. She walked. 12 chairs. 20 feet of black walnut. Every eye in the room. The morning sun laid a stripe of light across the table. Her sneakers from Friday were gone. She wore low heels that made no sound. She passed Gregory at the foot. She did not look at him. She did not need to. She reached the head of the table. She turned. She sat down. For a moment, nobody spoke. The room had been built to absorb sound, and right then it absorbed all of it. "Good morning," Simone said. Her voice was steady, warm, almost, the way a surgeon's voice is warm before the first incision. "Before we proceed with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to address an incident that took place in this building on Friday evening. Some of you have already been briefed, some of you have not. We're going to watch a few minutes of footage together. Then we'll discuss next steps." She nodded at the woman seated against the wall. Vanessa Brooks, her chief of staff, 35, sharp navy suit, tablet in hand. Vanessa tapped twice. The large screen at the end of the boardroom came alive. Camera 14. 50th floor, Friday evening. Timestamp visible. A man in a navy suit, a wine cart, a sommelier, a woman in a gray hoodie holding a folder. The footage played without commentary. The board watched Gregory tell Simone she was on the wrong floor. The board watched Bradley laugh about misplacements. The board watched Gregory's wrist tilt, the espresso pour down the front of the gray hoodie, the folder soak through. The board listened to the sentence about those filthy rags. Bradley Sinclair, 2 seats to Gregory's left, went a color close to the wallpaper. One director, a retired CFO of a Fortune 50 company, closed her eyes. Another, a venture partner in his 60s, set his pen down very gently, as if it might break. Gregory found his voice halfway through the footage. "Margaret, that footage is... The lighting on that floor is poor. You can't see the... There's clearly a misunderstanding here. Margaret raised one hand, just one. He stopped. Simone reached for the paper bag on the table. She slid it down the wood. It slid the length of the table and came to a soft stop directly in front of Gregory's place. "Mr. Whitmore," she said quietly, "I think you'll recognize what's inside." Gregory looked at the bag. He did not open it. He did not need to. The bag sat in front of him for a long moment before anyone moved. Gregory pushed it away with 2 fingers, like it might bite. "Margaret, look. I have built every floor of this building. I have a long history of supporting diversity, of mentoring. I have black friends. I have black executives. Gregory." It was a long day. The lighting on that floor is poor. I genuinely thought, well, the optics were not what they appeared to be. This is being taken out of context. There is no context in which I would speak to a colleague that way. Simone spoke for the first time since the footage ended. "Mr. Whitmore." Her voice carried the way a struck tuning fork carries. Quiet, but the whole room aligned to it. "You're confirming exactly what the footage already shows. Your treatment of me depended entirely on who you thought I was. That is the problem. Whether the person you thought I was is real or imagined, every employee of this firm with the same skin and the same clothes deserves the same dignity you give the donors you take to dinner. That is not a debate. That is a baseline." Gregory opened his mouth. He closed it. Margaret cleared her throat once. "Madam CEO, may I move to the formal resolution? Please." Margaret turned to the table. "Pursuant to the succession framework approved 6 weeks ago, I move the following. 1. Gregory Whitmore is removed from all operational roles effective immediately. 2. His honorary title is suspended pending a workplace conduct investigation. 3. Bradley Sinclair is placed on administrative leave pending the same. 4. Outside counsel will conduct a 60-day review of any prior complaints involving either man. Motion." "Second," said the retired CFO. "All in favor, aye," said every voice at the table. Not one pause, not one held breath. Bradley made a small, strangled sound from his seat. Gregory did not make any sound at all. "Motion carries, unanimously." Margaret pressed a button on the console. The door opened. 3 figures walked in, 2 corporate security officers in dark suits, and Andre Williams in pressed uniform, body cam steady. Simone met Andre's eyes for half a second. Andre nodded once and stepped back to the wall. "Mr. Whitmore, Margaret said. "You'll have 15 minutes to collect personal items from your office under supervision. Your building access has been deactivated as of this moment." She slid a small white plastic card across the table. His executive badge. The security officer tapped twice on a handheld terminal. The badge's green light winked out. He set it face up in front of Gregory. "Mr. Sinclair, the same applies to you. Your badge." Bradley fumbled at his lanyard with shaking hands. The badge clicked dead on the second tap. The two security officers stood at the door. "Gentlemen, when you're ready." Gregory stood up slowly. He looked, for the first time in 31 years, like a man who did not know which way the exit was. He looked at Margaret. He looked at the board. He looked at Simone. Simone did not look back. "Mr. Whitmore," Andre said, polite as Friday night. "This way, sir." He walked them out. The symmetry was quiet. Andre on Friday had walked Simone into a security office on Gregory's orders. Andre on Monday walked Gregory through the lobby on Simone's. Nobody in the lobby clapped. Nobody needed to. The receptionist stood up as he passed. Donna Anderson, on her usual rotation downstairs that morning, watched from her station. She did not smile. She did not have to. Outside the front doors, a small line of reporters and 2 camera crews were already on the sidewalk. Margaret's communications team had been busy. Gregory got into a black car alone. The car pulled away. At 11 a.m., Simone addressed the entire firm. 2,000 employees on a single live call. She introduced herself. She named what had happened Friday in plain language. No unfortunate, no isolated. She announced a 60-day culture review led by outside counsel, an independent reporting channel off WCG servers, and a standing commitment that any retaliation would be a firing offense. She thanked Andre Williams by name. Then she said, "We're going to be a better company by Friday than we were last Friday. Thank you. Get back to work." By 3 o'clock that afternoon, more than 30 current and former employees had submitted accounts. By 4, the count was past 40. By 5, Vanessa Brooks knocked on Simone's door and said the words, "We need to call outside counsel back," and they both knew this was no longer just an HR review. It was about to become something much larger. The deposition was scheduled for 9 in the morning, 4 months after the boardroom vote. In those 4 months, Gregory had lost 3 corporate board seats, his membership at 2 private clubs, and any title at WCG that could not be revoked by mail. The SEC had opened an inquiry into his expense reimbursements over a 6-year period. His director and officer insurance carrier had filed for a coverage exclusion on the grounds of intentional misconduct. The Greenwich estate was already on the market. So was the Manhattan penthouse. His daughter, a Harvard MBA, had asked him to step down as chair of her foundation. 2 of his oldest friends had stopped returning his calls. The maitre d' at his usual Madison Avenue restaurant no longer remembered his name out loud. The world he had built around himself was, quietly, dismantling itself around him. He arrived at the law office in Midtown without an entourage. 1 personal attorney. No sommelier. The deposition room was windowless, painted off-white, fluorescent. A long table, a stenographer with a small machine in front of her, a video deposition camera on a tripod, the red light, steady. Across from Gregory sat the lead plaintiff's attorney, Karen Mitchell, 48 years old, 23 current and former WCG employees in her class action, 20 years at the most respected civil rights firm in the country. She did not begin with a question. She turned to her paralegal. "Roll camera 14. The screen at the end of the room came alive. Gregory had seen the footage once before, in the boardroom. He had not slept the night after. He did not want to see it again. He had to. Karen Mitchell let it play to the line. Then she paused it. "Mr. Whitmore, on the screen you say, and I quote from the certified transcript in front of you, 'She smells of failure.' Those filthy rags always have that smell, and even coffee can't help mask it. Did you say those words on Friday evening, October the 24th, on the 50th floor of Whitmore Capital Group?" Counsel, my client, I am asking your client. Sir, did you say those words? I said something to that effect. Please read the words aloud for the record. A long pause. The red light on the camera held steady. He read them. When he finished, Karen Mitchell turned to a folder. Mr. Whitmore, I am going to ask you about a woman named Olivia Anderson. She filed an HR complaint against you in March of 2021. You signed the document terminating her employment 6 weeks later. Do you recall? I do not recall the specifics. I have the document, your signature, your initials in 3 places. The grounds cited are culture fit. Did you have a definition of culture fit you applied uniformly across the firm? I did not. Teresa Brown, marketing analyst, hired in 2019, filed a complaint about your remarks at the holiday party, was terminated by you citing performance 8 days later. Her performance reviews are in this folder. They were all in the top quartile. Did you read them before signing her termination? I trusted the recommendation of Camille Johnson, executive assistant. She is in our class. She was in the corridor on Friday evening. Do you recognize her name? I do not. She worked outside your office for 2 years. Karen Mitchell did not raise her voice once. She did not need to. The folders did the work. The deposition went on for 11 hours over 2 days. 14 names, 14 folders, 14 patterns of language, of routing, of termination, of carefully filed and quietly buried HR complaints. By the end of the second day, Gregory had said, I do not recall so many times the stenographer stopped wincing. At the very end, Karen Mitchell did one last thing. A paralegal walked in carrying a brown paper bag, sealed with an evidence label. She set it on the table in front of Gregory and broke the seal. She lifted out a folded gray hoodie. The front was stiff and dark where the coffee had soaked through and dried over 4 months. Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, Karen Mitchell said. Mr. Whitmore, do you recognize this garment? Gregory's lawyer started to speak. Karen Mitchell did not look at him. Mr. Whitmore, do you recognize it? He looked at the hoodie for a long time. Yes. For the record, the witness has identified Exhibit 1. Counsel will have a copy of the certified transcript to you by Friday. We are done here. A portion of the video deposition, the moment Gregory was made to read his own words back aloud, and the moment he identified the hoodie, was released a week later under a court-authorized filing. Within 48 hours, the clip had been played on every major financial morning show in the country, side by side with the original corridor footage. Op-eds appeared in the Financial Times, The Atlantic, and Black Enterprise. 2 major MBA programs added the case to their fall governance modules. Bradley Sinclair sat for a financial podcast interview that same week, attempting damage control. The host paused the conversation halfway through and quietly played the clip of Bradley laughing about diversity hires. Bradley stood up, walked out, and did not return. He was terminated for cause by his interim employer the next morning, named individually in the civil action, and his broker-dealer license was suspended with the class action settled at a low 9-figure number, with full structural reforms required across hiring, promotion, and complaints handling, and an independent monitor appointed for 5 years. The SEC matter went forward separately. The carrier denied Gregory's coverage. The Greenwich estate closed in March. The penthouse a month later. Harvard Business School quietly removed his name from the donor of distinction wall. On the last day of the deposition, Gregory walked out of the law office alone. A single television camera was on the sidewalk. A reporter called out, "Mr. Whitmore, do you have anything to say to Ms. Foster?" He did not. 50 blocks south, on the 60th floor of Whitmore Capital Group, Simone Foster was signing the founding charter of a paid mentorship program with 3 historically black colleges. Vanessa Brooks held the pen for her, the way old assistants used to hold a pen for a judge. Simone signed each page slowly. The morning light caught the windows behind her. She did not know the reporter had asked the question. She did not need to. 6 months after the boardroom vote, on a Tuesday in late April, Whitmore Capital Group held its first annual employee summit under the new charter. The blind review hiring system had been live for 90 days. The analyst class for the coming summer was the most diverse in the firm's history. 60% of incoming interns came from public universities and historically black colleges. The paid mentorship pipeline with 3 HBCUs and 2 key UNY campuses had its first graduating cohort, and 4 of them had already accepted full-time offers. An independent ethics ombudsperson, a retired federal prosecutor named Diane Sullivan, reported directly to the board, not to management. She had a budget, a staff of 2, and standing authority to bypass the CEO on any matter she deemed appropriate. Simone had signed off on the bypass clause herself. "If she can't go around me," she had told the board, "I haven't built the office correctly." Andre Williams had been promoted into a new corporate security leadership track that had not existed 8 months earlier. He had enrolled in a part-time degree program at Baruch College, paid for by a scholarship Simone had personally established and named after her mother. He still wore his body cam to work every day. He still recommended a copy be requested through HR. Vanessa Brooks remained chief of staff. Margaret Ellis remained chair of the board. Olivia Anderson had returned to WCG in a senior policy role, drafting the firm's permanent anti-retaliation framework. The framework would be adopted by 3 other Wall Street firms within the year. Teresa Brown had taken a teaching post at NYU's Business School. Camille Johnson had accepted the executive director role of the new mentorship pipeline. Donna Anderson, after 19 years at the executive reception desk, had been promoted to lead the new employee experience office. The wall of magazine covers in the lobby had been replaced. The covers were still there. Gregory's, all of them. They had simply been moved to a single panel in the basement archive room, framed and lit as part of the firm's institutional history. In their place, in the lobby, was a much larger wall of small portraits. Every employee currently working at WCG, alphabetical by first name, refreshed quarterly. 2,000 faces. Late on the evening of the summit, after the last hand had been shaken and the last cocktail glass collected, Simone walked back into her office alone. The lights along Manhattan had come on. The river was a strip of dark glass. She turned off her desk lamp and stood at the window for a long time. On her desk now, in the silver frame, sat the photograph of her mother from the kitchen in Tribeca. She had moved it from the apartment 3 months earlier. It sat next to a small ceramic mug she had carried back from Detroit the last weekend she had visited. Her mother had asked her on the drive to the airport whether all this was making her happy. Simone had said, "It is making me useful." Her mother had laughed. "Useful first, happy follows." Simone reached out and adjusted the frame by ½ an inch. Then she went home. The story you just heard is fiction. The corridor and the names and the deposition and the binder are imagined. But the feeling at the heart of it, being looked at and decided about before you've even said your own name, is not imagined. It happens, quietly, to people who are not often the chief executive of anyone. Most of those people do not have a Margaret Ellis on speed dial. Most of them do not get a Monday morning that flips the table. Most of them just absorb the moment, change their clothes, and keep walking. That is the part of this story that is real. So before you scroll, have you ever been the woman in the corridor? Or have you ever been the person standing in the corridor who could have said something and did not? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me which one you were, and which one you want to be next time. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to see it. Hit the like button, subscribe. There are more of these I want to tell you. And remember, the next person you brush past like nothing might be the person who signs your paycheck on Monday. Talk to everyone like that anyway. Dignity isn't a privilege of rank. It's the floor we all stand on.